everybody. Welcome to the Silver Lyming. My name is Anne Desjardins. I'm your host here, and someone who feels rather compelled to put this podcast together in an effort to, again, spread awareness, give hope to those who are going through this. As I was talking about a little bit earlier with my guest here today, we both find a resource like this to be invaluable just because as we were both going through it, maybe we didn't have too many stories to grab onto of people who have gotten better. Maybe we did, but at least this gives us one concise place to go that you have lots of different stories to hear about people who have healed from Lyme and tick-borne illness. And people continue to reach out to me every day, which is really nice because I know there are so many more survivors and people who have gone through this. And to remind you, 400 to 600,000 people a year by CDC's own estimates are infected in our own country with Lyme and tick-borne illness. And that's a pretty staggering number when we look at comparison to HIV, AIDS, breast cancer, colon cancer, and there's another one, maybe hepatitis, that fall into that. With all of those sicknesses combined, they don't even total that number. So this is a very large population. And again, if you're also not familiar, Lyme and tick-borne illness unfortunately has one of the highest rates of suicide. And I've spoken about it on past episodes, but I can completely attest to why and understand it. When you don't feel well every day without answers, it becomes more of an attractive option. But I really want you to think twice about that and know that your life can change in an instant. And maybe you've tried a lot of different things to heal yourself and haven't quite got where you want to go, but maybe by listening to this show, you're going to get some new ideas, or talking to other people in the community, you'll get some different perspectives about new avenues you can try that could help you. And what if it's the right thing? What if it's the final thing that really needs to get to your soul to push you into the healing space? This again isn't intended to be medical advice, but to give you different perspectives of people who have healed from this. I liken everyone to basically a Rubik's Cube, if you will. We all have our own combination and our own assortment of ways that's going to help us to heal. No two beings are the same with this, but I think if we ultimately can take pieces from everyone and construct something together for us, that's going to help us unlock the combination to wellness again. And if you're at the end of the rope again, just keep holding on. Listen to today's story. Maybe this is the one that you need to hear that's going to help to give you enough soul fuel, tackling fuel to continue on forward. One of the things I always thought about when I was particularly unwell was one foot after the next. It literally was an effort to walk, to put one foot down after the next. And if you're in that space, I've been there. You can get better, you can heal, and don't give up. Just keep fighting for yourself, become your own best advocate. Unfortunately, maybe that's the best we can do right now societally, is to just make yourself your own best advocate. I know it can be a challenge when your brain isn't thinking so clearly or at all. If you have infection in your brain, it makes it very difficult to grasp onto concepts and ideas. But in our community, the Lyme community, there are a lot of coaches available, a lot of different AI tools that are being developed right now to help you to be a little bit more organized, to help you to know which questions to ask the doctor, what to talk about, the things that you should think about. And again, through guests like I've got today with me, Kathy Dolan, I'm very grateful. She has reached out to me on social media to be a guest here to share her story of healing and wellness. And, there's people like this, again, that we can gravitate to look to as an example, as someone who's gone through it. And what I had said to her earlier is we're all humans, right? If I can do it, you can do it. And that's really what I want you to remember if you're struggling that badly. If you're someone who's not been exposed to Lyme and tick-borne illness, wonderful. Let's try to keep you that way. You want to be as safe as you can and as smart as you can about exposure. They are clearly in the environment. There's nothing that we can do about that at this point in time, but we can be smarter citizens about our exposure, making sure that we stay in the center of trails, putting on insect repellent, whether it be natural or chemical, where they make special clothing for people who are exposed to outdoor activities constantly, like hunters, or if you have a job that leads you to be working outside, you can get permethrin treated clothing. Showering right when you come inside, making sure that you do a tick check every day. They gravitate towards spaces that you probably don't necessarily see them too quickly, maybe your belly button or between your toes and your armpits, on your back, along your hairline. And if you have someone to help you check your body, that's even better. But if not, at least you can do your due diligence for yourself. If you have children and pets, make sure that you're giving that attention as well and checking them daily and teach them, especially children, not necessarily going to teach your pets, but teach your children the importance of what a tick check means. And that alone can help to keep you so much safer. If you are exposed to a tick bite, I would recommend that you save the tick, send it in for testing. Don't flush it. They can test ticks a lot more easily and readily than they can test people. Unfortunately, the people testing has a long way to go in terms of being 100% accurate. We're currently at about a 50 to 65% accuracy rate with the initial two-tier testing, the ELISA and the Western blot, which then in of itself is a problem. But I know we're working on coming up with some better solutions. And there are more specialized labs that are a lot more sensitive. If you are suspecting that you do have tick-borne illness and those first two tests come back negative, don't write it off. I would continue pursuing that avenue, especially knowing what I know now, and push for more sensitive testing. A Lyme literate physician can help you with that. But that's a lot of information coming at you. And if you have questions about any of this, obviously I'm here to help you. You can reach out to me at any time. But my guest today, as I mentioned, is Kathy Dolan. She's joining us from Illinois, and I'm really grateful to learn more about her story and her experience with it. So I feel we have a lot in common already in just the few moments that we've spent together, connecting a little bit more. So Kathy, without further ado, again, thank you for being here as a guest on my show. And if you could please share with us a little bit more about how you became involved with Lyme and tick-borne illness for our listeners.
Sure. And thank you again for having me today. I really appreciate it. I would say that my Lyme journey started in 2018, although I had no idea what I was going through. I had my third child in September. A couple months go by, I'm feeling fine. I'm having some issues, some headaches, very tired, fatigued. Kind of just didn't think twice about it because, you just had a baby, your body's adjusting. So during my checkup with my physician, I mentioned all these things and he said, just give it some time. You're breastfeeding, you just had a baby, let your body get back to normal. I said, okay. So I decided to start working out again. I had always worked out. I was like, maybe this is what I need. I need to get back into a routine, start getting myself back into shape. And so I went with a friend. She was a personal trainer and had a great workout with her. The next morning I woke up and I couldn't move. And I thought, okay, well, you're just getting back into it. It's going to be fine. So I kept going to her, but every single time it hit me even worse the next day when I would try to get out of bed. And I thought, there's something more. Again, the headaches continued very badly. Insomnia was terrible. I couldn't sleep. My mind was just racing. I had heart palpitations. My legs, my joints, my legs felt like a ton of bricks. I could barely walk up and down our stairs. So I went back to my physician, and since my primary complaint was my legs, my joints, my muscles, like spasms and stuff, they referred me to a rheumatologist. So finally got into a rheumatologist, and she said, I think it's fibromyalgia. And I said, okay, like somebody finally gave me an answer as to what I was experiencing. And she was very quick to prescribe me something. But as I called my husband, and I was so excited, like somebody finally heard me out, listened to me. He goes, I am so sorry, like to burst your bubble. Like he's a pharmacist. And so he's very well versed in the healthcare area. And he goes, I don't think that's it. He's like, a lot of physicians, like, if you can't really figure it out or narrow it down, fibromyalgia is kind of like a blanket, to give you an answer. And I said, really? And, I had all this hope. And then it was just kind of sucked out of me. And he's like, you need to keep fighting. You need to keep figuring this out. He's like, I don't think that's what it is. So I went to a former doctor that I had gone to in the past. She's actually a close relative of mine. And every time I would go to her with something off with me, she would always figure it out. And so I said, I got an appointment with her and I told her, I was like, I need your help. I don't know what's going on. And so she said, have you been tested for lupus? Have you been tested for Lyme disease? And I said, no. And she said, did you ever see a bullseye rash? Did you ever have a bite? And I said, I never saw anything. So she sent off for a test. I got tested. It came back inconclusive. And she said, I'm pretty certain if you were to go to a Lyme literate doctor, they would see this test differently. And so she referred me to a couple local physicians. I couldn't really get in quick enough. And I ended up seeing Dr. Christ in Ashland, Missouri, which is about, I don't know, 5.5, 6 hour drive from Peoria for me. So in December of 2019, I finally got diagnosed with Lyme disease.
Okay.
And it was almost a full year, sorry, of nobody listening, nobody understanding, the depression, the anxiety. Like I never had anxiety. I was always a happy person. With 3 kids, you go all the time. You're going. And I had a full-time job. I was an HR supervisor here in town, and I ended up quitting my job. I couldn't think. My brain fog was just so bad. Like things that I knew, things that people would come to me for at work. I would look them and they would be like, why are you looking at me like that? And I'm like, I don't know. I have a blank stare. It's just, I can't think. And so it was like everything was just sucked out of me. And then to finally be diagnosed, to finally get a treatment plan in order was just, it I don't want to say amazing, but it was just, okay, we can do this. We can fight through this. But
Yes.
similar to, you and I talking before, it just, nobody understands unless they've experienced it themselves. I had a lot of people that were like, you look fine. You look great. Are you sure it's not just all in your head? So then you kind of double guess yourself, like, am I really sick? So finally somebody's saying, this is what you have. Okay, everybody, do you believe me now?
Yes. And that's what I feel like it's kind of insane to say, but you really do question yourself. And when you finally get that diagnosis, it's like, oh, thank God I'm not crazy. Like
Yeah.
nobody should be grateful that they're getting diagnosed with anything, but it's like a huge day of just again gratitude and like, okay, I can make a plan now. At least I'm no longer grasping at straws and trying to put together a way to function as a human because you almost lose the ability to function as a human. Like I think of it as I was relegated to like a zombie. It was like a living, breathing zombie. The lights were on, but nobody was home. And it's
Mhm.
really embarrassing when you're trying to talk and communicate with other people and your brain isn't working and you're not able to communicate. Like you can't have a conversation because you can't remember really what you were talking to people about. And it causes social anxiety in and of itself. And it's like, well, I don't even want to go talk to anybody because I'm not capable of doing that. And to think that for a year of your life, you're questioning your own sanity, that 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 alone does so much damage to people. And I'm not sure if it's just simply like a difference between men and women, but I've read a lot of studies about this, and just women get brushed off as being told that it's stress or it's anxiety or you just had a baby. This is normal. Meanwhile, deep down inside, you're dying, literally dying. The life force is leaving your soul, your being, and nobody gets it and no one understands and no one hears you. And it's unfortunate because there are people who don't have somebody like your husband or your close relative there that they know you as an individual, and they can mark the changes that have actually happened to your personality, and they know like, okay, no, that's not quite right. Or again, having a medical background to like say, no, 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 that's definitely not fitting the bill. So many people, unfortunately, will just go on with that diagnosis of fibromyalgia and run down that path for a long time. And then more time that goes by, more damage that typically is done by this disease. It really is a corkscrew shaped organism that burrows into people's organs, into the white matter of your brain. And the longer it goes untreated, generally speaking, the harder it is to make it to come out of your body. So I'm glad that you had people there kind of as safety nets, to guide you and to support you through so that you could get to the right place. But think about the people that never get to that right place. And that again is another reason I do this, is just to bring awareness. Like if you're struggling with unanswered health challenges and you're like, okay, no, that really doesn't make sense. I mean, I got told I had narcolepsy at one point in time. I knew that wasn't right. But I
Mhm.
was like, well, at least they see something. Like there's something
Yep.
in my brain that they're not thinking is normal. So it's not just totally in my head, but it lived very much in my head. I could tell you the exact space that it had affected my head. I wish I had brain scans. So good. So then you get a diagnosis, able to put together a plan. Really, what did that look like? What happened to you from the moment that you got a diagnosis then?
So I started immediately on doxycycline.
Okay.
I did that, and he has a very intricate protocol with different antibiotics. So you start on the doxy. He had me start on 2 a day, which just tore my stomach apart. Um, I felt really, really awful, and then I felt really good. And I remember one moment in my basement. I don't know what I was doing, but all of a sudden, like I felt a light come on inside of me, like I think I'm starting to feel better. Like it, and I'll never forget that moment because it was just like, okay, maybe I'm coming back. My life is coming back.
Mm,
And it felt amazing. Um, but then he would say, if you're starting to feel like you're kind of plateauing a little bit, go to a different protocol. So I think it was like a rotation of clindamycin and like Plaquenil. Um, I think that was the last round of antibiotics I did because after doing that, I felt great. I started doing vitamins and supplements. I would do magnesium glycinate was amazing for my muscles and my spasms. I would do IV infused vitamin C, magnesium drips. I would do those, and those would just, if I felt like I was getting a flare up, I would just immediately go and get one. And I was like, okay, it's going to be okay. I'm going to feel good. Um, Gluten, I eliminated gluten. Now, if we travel a lot with our kids, we're in travel hockey. So if we're going out to eat, I'll just take some digestive enzymes ahead of time, and that'll help break down the gluten, which is a game changer. Because I felt like once I eliminated that and sugar and the nightshade foods, it was like, okay, this feels good. So I think on top of all the antibiotics, the vitamins, the supplements, changing my lifestyle, sleep. He told me, he's like, if you don't sleep, I can't help you. Sleep was huge.
okay.
And stress, eliminate the stress.
Were you able, because I know you had mentioned you had insomnia. So then I'm imagining once the light started to come back on, maybe
My
sleep
sleep
and the
got better.
magnesium to help.
Magnesium was
Mhm.
huge. I mean, I take 2 of those at night and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. I still wake up every now and then, but I'm actually feeling like I'm resting. With the stress from my job was huge. And so it seemed like once I removed myself from that, I was able to work on myself and I could actually heal because I was taking time for me. I wasn't staying up late at night working. I wasn't worried about what I was going to go into the next day if I didn't get it done the night before. So I was actually finally able to shut it off. And I think that also helped tremendously.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Because that's
And I know
something.
it. I know
Really?
everybody can't do that. I was fortunate enough that I was able to. And I
Yeah.
know not a lot of people can because the treatment is so expensive. It's outrageous.
I was going to ask about that. And I know in Pennsylvania, long-term care isn't covered through insurance. And so I wasn't sure how it is in Illinois. I'm imagining it's probably not. But that's a huge hurdle for some people to get through. And I often joke, if you wanted to designer disease, you can go ahead and get yourself a case of Lyme because it is so expensive to fix, and you have to try all different kinds of things that you would never dream of doing in a normal realm. But when you're forced to fix your own body, like you really have to start looking at non-traditional ways, thinking outside the box. What can I do? How can I do this? How can I afford this? And for people listening, sometimes, and I wonder if this happened to you, Kathy, but I feel like maybe we live with Lyme spirochetes in our body and they have no bearing on us, right? Like they don't really impact us. And then we go through a major stressor or a very stressful time, and that's the catalyst that ignites that then being problematic. And maybe childbirth did that for you. It's not super, like we don't think of it hopefully as a negative stressor, but it is a stressor on the body and the being, and your hormones are changing and the whole thing in your system is put into a different space. Maybe that was a trigger, who knows? But for those of us who never found a bullseye rash, we don't know when we were bitten. Like, when did it really come into my body? And was it the day I started to feel symptomatic, or was it living in my system? And again, things activated it. I think for me, I was bit when I was 20. I was bit a few times in my life, but I think the tick that did it to me was when I was in my 20. And then through my 20s, I was in a very stressful situation, which ended with like a huge whack. And I think that's what triggered. I don't necessarily think I got bit right before my symptoms started. I think it was just a slow build up to that point, and then it just all started to crash. So, for the listeners, again, if you have the option to shift or lessen your stress, or figure out different ways to deal with stress if you're not able to get away from it, like meditation or yoga, going for a walk, grounding yourself, just some different things that, again, might be woo woo, like meditation, woo woo. But that's the kind of thing that I use now as tools to help to get rid of some of life stress. We always are going to have things that are happening in our lives that probably are stressors. And so just in terms of maintenance and maintaining health, that kind of thing will really lend well to you. But um, okay, so you're pulsing different antibiotics, you're doing protocol, vitamins, herbs, changing your diet, changing your lifestyle. So again, people, if you're not grasping at this, like when this happens to you, basically you're almost going to be reborn as a new human. And if you do not embrace that, you're probably going to be kind of stuck. So you have to make some serious changes in life. My dad would always ask me, how do you eat like that? It's like, well, when you don't feel unwell and you know what the other side of it looks like, it's very simple to not eat gluten or dairy or caffeine or drink alcohol. It's very, very simple to make those choices because I value myself and I value what that gives to me. And I'm curious then, with three children, like how did that impact your relationship with your kids and the way that they saw you? I mean, I would imagine that was probably pretty hard for them to see their mommy sick. Um, for listeners, like how did you explain that to them? How did that part of things go?
It was very hard. And I will say, I feel like I missed out on a lot of special moments with all three of my boys because of Lyme. I don't remember a whole lot. I feel like memories just kind of went out the door. I remember a lot of times, we would be traveling. They'd have early morning games. I couldn't get out of bed. I'd miss their hockey game, or we'd get back and people would be down in the lobby hanging out, and mom would be up laying in bed because the antibiotics were ripping my stomach apart. And I literally just felt so sick. But as they've grown older, they've like my 12-year-old, mom, can you tell me more about Lyme? Like, tell me tell me more about it. Like, how do we get it? They're cautious. Like, we go outside, they're nervous. I'm like, dude, you can't live your life nervous. We get our yard sprayed, we take proper precautions. I'm always on edge though. I'm trying not to show my kids that I'm on edge every time we're outside, but it's hard. Um, but my husband, I mean, I couldn't have done it without him. I just know there was nights that he would just sit there and cry with me. And it was hard. I would say that like that was during that time was like the deepest, darkest days I ever had.
Yeah.
Where sometimes I would just lock myself in the bathroom and cry and just say, you know what? It can be over now. But I had people that I needed to fight for. So yeah, I kept going.
Yes. Thank God. Thank God.
Yes.
And hopefully now, not that I would ever want your husband to have firsthand experience of it, but in his line of work now, if he hears about somebody struggling like you were, he can now encourage them to get tested for Lyme and tick-borne illness. And it won't be so enigmatic to him to say, okay, you've got these weird symptoms. It was funny to me that my pharmacist would often know certain things that doctors didn't tell me, or have different insight about things interacting with each other that maybe the doctor should have been aware of, but they weren't. And so I was always grateful for those conversations that I could have with my pharmacist, because it was kind of a neutral party in a sense, but very knowledgeable, very wide knowledge base. And that makes a lot of sense given everything that they see and dispense medications for and help people through. Um, and I'm again just glad you had such an understanding partner. Sometimes people will find that that's not the case, and their partner meets them with a lot more resistance because you talked about it a little bit earlier. You look completely fine. And this is an invisible illness. This is something that people don't see. Your hair is not falling out from chemo. You're not going to the cancer treatment center. There is no real, there are Lyme treatment centers, but not in the same uh, commonality as cancer treatment centers, right? Like those are kind of everywhere. Unfortunately, lots of people are suffering from that. And I know from other guests I've had on my show that have had cancer and have had Lyme, they say Lyme is way worse. And I think that's part of it, is because it is an invisible illness. Like you look totally fine and no one gets it. Another thing we say, you don't get it till you get it.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate that you have to actually walk in these shoes to get it, because you can have serious warnings from people like you or I, like, you don't want anything to do with this. Please take this more seriously. And even myself, before I got it, I thought, oh, you just take antibiotics for 30 days and you're on your way. Well, that unfortunately was not the case for me. And it sounds like for you, you had to do a little bit more of an extensive treatment regimen to get yourself back to a place of wellness. And again, like you change your whole being. Like it's not just antibiotics. Like you have to redo your entire life. You have to relearn a way to be in a more healthful place with yourself. And my heart breaks for you to think about your three sons. And I'm also glad in a sense that they're still little. Like you have so much more time ahead with them. And I would also imagine it really makes you appreciate the time that you do have with them even more, because obviously nothing is guaranteed either. And we hope to stay here for a long time now in a place of health, but that can also change in the blink of an eye. And just to be present and to be aware and to really understand the magnitude of the gift that you're given of time with each other. I think, we look at the world a lot differently that way as well once you go through something like this. So,
Absolutely.
can you tell me then from start to finish, if you will finish, I don't know if you're still embracing, I would imagine that a lot of the habits that you changed, you probably still do, but
Mhm.
really like, so it took a year to get diagnosed. And then how long were you under um, acute treatment, if you will, for this?
I officially went off of every antibiotic in 2021.
Okay. So 2 years of treatment.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then now again, do you ever feel anything in your body anymore? Or
It's just off times that I do, but I know how to keep it at bay. Like if I feel something coming on, I know right away what to do. I know, I need to eat clean. If I don't, I know I'm going to pay the next day.
Yeah.
So it's just maintaining that lifestyle. Um, and kind of like you said, you're rebuilding your whole self.
Yeah.
And I feel like I did that. And I felt like on the way of that journey, it's okay to tell people no. It's okay to take time for yourself. Because if you can't care for yourself, you can't care for anybody else.
Amen. Amen.
So,
That's a huge, huge lesson. And something I think, again, particularly as women, that we really need to pay attention to is, again, we're wired as caregivers. We want to support others. You have 3 children, you have a partner, a husband, it's like you really got to be more mindful about making sure that they're taken care of. Kids are little, they need all the support that they can get. But if we're not stopping to take care of ourselves first or make ourselves the priority, you're gonna probably really pay the price in the long run. And maybe it doesn't pop out as Lyme and tick-borne illness. Maybe it manifests itself in a different way, but you really got to make sure that you're giving yourself love and attention and self-care. And many times I will talk to women and they're like, what is, like, they don't even know what self-care means for themselves. Like, what does that even look like? And maybe it's 5 minutes of meditation a day. Maybe it's giving yourself a 5-minute massage at the end of the night, or maybe have your husband rub some magnesium on your legs or something along those lines to help you just to feel like a priority, to make yourself matter. And boundaries, right? It's
mhm,
okay to say no. We have to in self-preservation. You can't say yes to everything. You're going to really regret it. You're going to find out the hard way if you just give, and do not make those boundaries. And so maybe that's part of why this happens to us, is that we needed to learn that lesson, and that was the only way that we were going to really listen, was because it was going to be life or death matter. you know you need to learn this, or maybe the next lifetime you're just going to be in the same exact space and having to learn this lesson again. So we're going to do something very severe to you right now so you really get this lesson and grasp it and don't let go. And a lot of my other guests will think of this as a permanent life accountability coach, right? Like, I will picture like the good angel and the bad angel on our shoulders. And it's easy sometimes to fall back into old habits, or like, oh, I really want that piece of pizza, or oh, I really want to have a glass of wine, or oh, I really want to. And we do it because we're humans, but then we pay the price. And again, it just becomes a little bit easier to not fall prey to those kinds of decisions when you understand the ramifications of it and really what comes out of it as a consequence if we give in to these indulgences. And nobody has to live their life completely strict and with no joy. There's no point in living anyways. You may as well just go ahead and off yourself if you're going to have nothing that you can enjoy. But you're just a lot more mindful of these choices. And
yes.
it'll be something that serves us. I look at it as something that serves me better now through life, because what would I look like had this not happened to me? I'd probably still be drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, not making myself a priority, giving everything that I had, being angry, resenting everyone and everything because there was nothing for myself, no space for me. God knows what my body would be doing. I had high cholesterol at one point in time, a couple other health challenges, and all that's been reversed through this process, and I'm grateful for it in the
Mhm.
end. It was hard in the middle, very, very hard in the middle. And I think too, it's like, so you kind of had a turning point, it sounds like, when the medication started to work and you kind of felt like you were coming back into the light and you were like, okay, I can do this. Um,
Mhm.
were there any other turning points like that for you? And also, if you don't mind, can you talk about, like, I feel like a lot of times it's hard for us to say that we're going to heal. I've heard many times Lyme never goes away, you're permanently going to have it. Did you have any of that dialogue coming into this, or were you always just very committed to the fact that you were going to heal? You knew you were going to heal. There was no question about it in your mind.
I think I was more committed to knowing that I had to heal. I had to do it because if I didn't, there was nobody here to take care of my family.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't have a family, that are going against this disease alone. And I just feel for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's another thing I want listeners to think about, is even if you don't have a family, think about your whys. Think about all the people, like you have parents, you came here through someone, like some human, so you have some family that way, or your friends, or even if it's just a simple fact of the sun warming your body and feeling that come through your being, like how good of a feeling is that? That could be a really good why. I want to feel the sun on my skin again. I want to feel healthy again. Like you got to commit to the fact that you're going to get better. Like it's easier if you have children or something like that to really latch onto as a why. But again, sometimes we have to fabricate some other whys that might not be as tangible as like a specific family member, but
Mhm.
but make that list and put it there somewhere that you can see it every day to remind yourself, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm not tapping out. This is why I'm choosing to walk this path and I'm going to get better. And I want people to really grasp that you can heal. This
Mhm.
isn't something that's meant to permanently debilitate us forever. This is something that unfortunately enters the body. It gets confused between us and other animals, and it doesn't it doesn't want to kill us. If it did, we die instantly, and sometimes unfortunately that is an outcome with this, that you get that sick that quickly. But its ultimate objective is to have like a symbiotic relationship with us to survive. If we die, it can't survive. It gets extinguished in our death as well. And it really doesn't want that. It really does want to survive and go on. So know that. And if you're having a lot of those thoughts in your head, do your best to separate yourself from that as well. Like when I was really sick, my brain wasn't thinking right at all, at all.
Mhm.
But I think many times the illness was thinking for me or like talking to me inside. And I had to really give myself space between me and that and say, that's not Anne. That's the sickness. That's the Lyme talking. That's the Bartonella talking. That's whatever it is. And isolate it that way and hold it out there and see it for what it is and know that your true being does not want to die. It's that inflammation of the brain that's making us think a little bit more convoluted on that topic. I'm curious too, oh, go ahead.
Oh, and I also think another goal for me through healing was I'm going to help other people.
Mhm.
I'm not specialized in anything, but I can sit there, I can listen to you tell your story. I can be a guide. I can tell you what helped for me. I can tell you what I went through. And when I was diagnosed, I didn't feel like there was anybody that I could talk to. Um, I didn't, there was a couple people in my hometown that I knew went through it, but at a different age. Not that it matters, but they were just different circumstances. And I talked to them still, but it was just not like what I feel like what you're doing now. I had no resources and I didn't feel like any resources were given to me. So I had told my husband, I told myself, I want to help other people.
Mhm.
I don't want them to go down that dark path that I did.
Yes.
And if, they're putting one foot in that door, no, I want them to get out. I want them just to have somebody to talk to.
Yes. Yes. Which brings us to a good point in terms of really where you're at with things now and some things that you're working on. And, again, these experiences change us, I think ultimately and in the end for the better. But there's a lot of pain in the middle. And once we get to the other side, we can see things a lot more differently. And we are much more empathetic just to the human race in general, but specifically to people with Lyme and tick-borne illness. So, can you talk a little bit more about maybe the direction things are going to go in for you with what you have there in the state of Illinois?
Yeah, sure. So, through my husband's work, he's met a lot of doctors that are now starting to really focus on Lyme disease, which is huge for Peoria.
Yeah.
It's big. And so through them, he's heard of different opportunities. I recently, last year, we got involved with Illinois Lyme Association.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know Jen Russell and her daughter Lauren or their story, but Jen started it for her daughter Lauren,
Okay.
who got really sick.
Okay.
And so we had been told about a golf fundraiser that they were doing. So we went and I talked with Jen. She's an amazing person. And so through her, just about a month ago, with a local painting artist here in town, she's a good friend of mine, we put on an event called Paint and Sip, and it benefited the Illinois Lyme Association. We had a very small but mighty group, and we raised close to over $4,000
Mm.
for a first time event, which was huge. So looking to do a lot more with their association. I think a really big goal of mine, and I know I tell people this all the time, and they just kind of look at me and they're like, "Really? Like, how are you going to do that?" I felt like through healing, music was huge.
Yeah.
I've always loved music, but just listening to inspiring artists and songs really helped me get through some of those dark days. And so my big goal is to do a concert series and call it Music Heals, and just bring in artists and gather people together to be with one another and know that you've got this.
Yeah. You're
So that's my
making me
ultimate
cry.
goal. I'm sorry. So, I'm starting small and starting to get the word out more here in town, because I don't feel like, it's pretty relevant. Like, the more people you talk to and come across, they know somebody that had Lyme,
That's
or
right.
they have it themselves and just didn't talk about it because nobody really talks about it.
Yes.
And so just, I've had people that have called me and been like, "Hey, I know so and so with Lyme. Are you willing to talk with them?" Absolutely.
Yes.
So just, I think those, the little things, I want to get to
Yeah.
the bigger piece eventually. So hopefully.
Personally, I think what you're doing is huge, not little. It's like rolling a boulder uphill, right? Like that's not easy work to do, and you got to start somewhere. And so $4,000 already to the greater good of research and helping organizations have funding to have volunteers that can maybe go out and campaign and canvass your neighborhoods and explain to people a little bit more about these dangers is huge. Um, I do have goosebumps through my whole being right now. Music is such a healing modality,
Mhm.
and I don't know if people really put enough credence in that. I went to the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra not that long ago, and I just was sobbing because every person in that audience was completely entranced with what was going on in front of them. Everyone was so present and together. Like that alone made me cry. It was so beautiful
Mhm.
to see all of these people coming together from all walks of life, all ages, all everything together in one at the same effort, putting this energy towards this thing. And I've read in Washington, D.C., 1% of the population had meditated together, and the crime rate drastically dropped for the remaining 6 months period after that, just from 1% of the population, right? So, like, if you can get people in your community, even 1% of those people in your area, involved in something like this, entranced in that moment, we might not think of sitting and listening to music as meditation, but in a sense it is, right? Like we're very
Mhm.
present. That's what you're really wanting to do with meditation is to just to stop thinking about all the other naggy little things that we've got coming to us and just to be present. And the impact that that has on the energy in the world is it's profound, right? And so what
Yeah.
you're doing there is amazing and very magnitudinal in this effort to spread more awareness, to get people all more thinking about healing and being more healthy, right? Like stopping that and doing that together, the brain scan of people that when you actually slow down like that in that moment is so much less like anxiety or negative or detrimental, right? Like people's brain scans are so much calmer.
Mhm.
And that's the space that true healing can occur in. So, what an amazing gift that you're giving, and what a great idea and a great way to do that kind of thing. That's really exciting. And I know it will be very successful. I'm excited to again see which way this road takes you on your journey because, like many of us, we are permanently impacted by this and we want to give back because we know I never want to think of it as an expense, but it is an expense in a way of life that we have lost or
Mhm.
that time that we lost. We were gaining things, you just don't really feel like it in that moment. And it does feel like a lot of time lost and certain opportunities that we weren't able to participate in. But if we can just save one other person from having to be in that space any longer than they have to be, it's a life worth living. And again, you're giving such an important gift back to your community, whether they acknowledge it at this moment in time or not. Remember back to the beginning, 400 to 600,000 people a year are infected with this. Like that's a staggering number. And it is once you're in the space, you start talking to other people, you find so many other people that have had a similar experience or something they have a family member or someone they know has gone through this and it looks very different for all people. Some people lose the ability to walk, some people lose the ability to talk, some people are barely touched by it. It really affects people differently. And that was one of the questions I was thinking to ask you earlier was did you have any co-infections? Was yours Lyme alone? Did you have,
Was
yep.
Lyme
Okay.
alone.
Okay. I know here in PA, they test ticks. They did a study on like 20,000 ticks, and I think they said 50% of them, that's one out of two ticks people, that's not a whole lot, had one or more tick-borne illnesses going on. And so, if you're feeling that you're in this space and you're getting tested for Lyme, again, that reliability of that test is not that great. But also keep in mind there are other things that a tick can unfortunately transmit to you, things like Babesia or Bartonella, ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Powassan virus. There's a whole litany of other things that it could potentially give to you. And the Lyme test is only looking for Lyme. So you need to make sure if you're in this space to ask the doctor to do a full spectrum of all tick-borne illnesses when they're testing your blood. And then, if you would, as a final thought, could you please share with me maybe what is the best thing that has happened to you as a result of getting Lyme and tick-borne illness?
I think just finding myself again
Mm.
has been probably the most beneficial part of being diagnosed. Just given the opportunity to finally bring life back into myself again. I have a different mindset now. You kind of mentioned that. Things click in a different way. You think of things in a different way. I see this as an opportunity for me to, like with you, sharing my story and hopefully, this helps somebody get through whatever they're going through.
It will.
Yeah. So that's the biggest thing. I'm just, I hate to say I'm grateful for what I've been through, but I'm hopeful that my story will help somebody.
And it will, and then some. And just again, the actions that you're taking forth to spread more awareness, to teach others about this, to help them keep themselves safer, their families safer, their pets safer. Because again, this doesn't affect just people; it affects animals as well. They are the primary target. People are kind of a secondary target that get caught in the middle. But um, I think about that many times. That's the answer in a sense that people find themselves, or they find their true purpose, or they really figure out why they're here, right? And it's unfortunate that it has to come in such an expensive package in so many ways in terms of health and finance and everything else. But it is a very beautiful gift, and I'm grateful for it. I think, in a sense, gratitude is kind of, I always grappled with that. Like, is this a sick question to ask people? Like, what's so good that happened to you out of this, you know? But also, not everything is bad. Not everything about this is bad. And it might really feel like that when you're in the middle of it, that everything indeed is horrible and terrible, and there is not one shred of good. But we have a really good community, and there's a lot of amazing people that I've met who give my soul comfort knowing that I'm not alone, and it's people like you. And I wouldn't have met you had it not been for this experience. Had we not had this shared common thing that happened to us, we live states away from each other. Again, we wouldn't have probably even known of each other's existence. And that alone is a very beautiful thing that comes out of this. And you will meet a lot of good people. There are a lot of people out there that get this, that understand it. And if you don't have any of those people in your tribe, you can reach out to me. I'm sure you can reach out to Kathy, and she would be happy to be your cheerleader as well. Like, we're glorified cheerleaders. Like, that's that's another way of looking at us, is that we get your heart, we understand where you're at. And if you need help, if you need some encouraging words or a soft ear to listen to you, there are plenty of people out there like us. And I'm grateful for your time. I'm so grateful that you've gotten better. I'm grateful for your children and your husband that they get their wife back, because wife and mother back. Like I have a lot of friends who have children that struggle with this, and I know the guilt that they feel from not being able to be present and not being able to be a participating member of the family, and the strife that that can cause, and the troubles that that can cause in that family unit, especially when it's like we all have equal weight and value, but a mother in particular is a lot of that to be lost, because we really rely heavily on our moms to get us through, to be there for us, to comfort us, to help us when we're sick. And if we don't feel good and we're not able to do that, that makes that position, that role to fulfill very hard. And that's a whole other layer of complexity that's added on in the healing process. And talk about stress, like feeling like you're not good enough, feeling like you're a horrible person because you're not able to be there in the way that you want to be there. Like, I cried plenty of times over that thought alone, just not being a good family member or a good friend, because I couldn't get off a couch. I couldn't think. I couldn't talk. I couldn't remember people's names. That's a
Yep.
very tough place to be. So I'm very, very grateful that you were able to find your way as well, and that you can shed your light this way. You can shine bright for others to find their way out of the darkness. And, you can be the light that the moths fly to and, and find their way and to be helpful. And I'm really excited again to see how things evolve for you with the Illinois Lyme Association, and just to see really what that turns into for you, because you have so much to give now. And you did find yourself, and you know now your limits as well, healthy limits, right? Like, I've got to say no. I've got to be strong enough to preserve self before I give all of self, because if I do, then there's nothing left for me to give to others. So this is a very powerful story for people to embrace that thought of, you're not being selfish, as they say, when the oxygen mask drops in the airplane. However, heaven forbid that never does, but put your own mask on first. This is the same kind of thing. You've got to put that mask on first and take care of self, and then you have the ability to focus and help others. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Give yourself grace. I mean, you've got to go easy on yourself. It's a day by day journey.
Yes, that's one of my favorite sayings: space and grace. Give
Yep.
yourself space and give yourself grace. And you've got to do that for yourself. Otherwise, you're going to drown.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but thank you for your time, Kathy. This has been wonderful. And I'm really excited to be able to share this with people. If they do want to contact you, could you please, do you mind sharing how the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Sure. They can reach me on social media, or email. I can share my email here if that helps. It's
Sure.
K Dolan, DOLAN 7911 at gmail.com.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. And again, I really look forward to being able to share your story here. And I know that it will help our listeners. And again, if you're listening and you're so inclined and you're interested to help to support this podcast, you can go onto my website, and there is a place that you can actually make donations. I am not opposed to even getting $1 a month. It does have a cost to actually produce this show. So if you have any spare change to lend to us to continue again to hear other stories about people recovering from Lyme and tick-borne illness, that would be really much appreciated as well. My website is the Silver Lyming, Lyming, just like the name of the podcast.com. And again, it's through PayPal. I never like asking for help, but I'm not going to deny you the ability to do that as well if you are so choosing. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to continuing to bring these stories forth to you.